Hello, Froggy here, and today I'll be going over sword flying again. Enough has changed since my last guide that I feel an update is in order. Let's go over what you'll need. A sword, of course, along with, perhaps more importantly, Lion Rampant. And you'll need the proper jump for the job, Catapult Lift. It gives a strong initial burst which you'll be using to stay in the air. The most important part of sword flying is knowing how Catapult Lift works. You'll want to be very familiar with the strong burst it gives you at first. You can turn the jump on and off by hitting space again, and you can even flutter it in air to stay up a bit longer. As you see, it gives you less and less over time, and that's where the sword swing comes in. A sword swing in the air will push you forwards, but more importantly, it will stop your downwards movement while it goes. But not if you're going too fast. You'll need to make sure you're not falling too much, or it won't help you at all. As a little aside, while the swing won't stop you from falling if you're falling too fast, it does cancel fall damage. If you have an eager edge sword, swapping to that perk will slow your fall, allowing you to start sword flying. If you don't have eager edge, you can accomplish a similar thing with a heavy swing. You can, of course, also just slow yourself down with Catapult Lift itself, but you have to be careful to flutter it so you don't use too much at once, or you won't be able to sword fly. Now let's get into sword flying itself. Catapult Lift gives you the strong initial burst, but it also recharges in the air, but not fast enough for you to just be able to hover. That's where the hang time from the sword swings come in. You want to use a little bit of jump, and swing as you start to fall to hang in the air for extra time. If you combo them together, you'll remain level in the air. There's a decent amount of flexibility to the cadence as long as you give enough time for the amount of jump you use to come back. You can see that I am using much shorter bursts and faster swings here, which keeps you more level, which is useful in case the death floor is pretty close below you. Generally speaking, you want to space your swings out as much as possible to conserve ammo. One thing to look out for is there is a cap to the height you can get from Catapult Lift, and if you start hitting that, you won't go up as high as you expect, and you might inadvertently use more of your jump than you want to. If that happens, you'll find yourself slowly falling. Luckily, you can recover from this, but the only way to do it is to allow yourself to fall more. And use your sword swinging to buy enough time for Catapult Lift to recharge. You can actually gain that height back too once you manage to get the initial boost back. You'll always want to make sure you're getting the big initial burst. You don't actually need a sword to sword fly. You can also use various abilities that give you some hang time, along with some supers. The stasis super will keep you up for quite a while, and also gives you access to glacier grenades, which is quite useful. Although I generally find Strand to be even more useful. You get 3 melees, which allows for greater hang time. And you get a similar sort of glide from the Strand super. At the end of your super, you'll find that the melees have recharged, so that allows you to stretch your ammo even further. Plus you have access to grapple in case you need a bit more height. You can take advantage of the height limit of Catapult Lift to set a high limit, then jump below some sort of obstacle, and then regain the height later as needed. Regaining height with sword flying requires a bit more precision because you're pushing that initial burst as much as you can to slowly rise in the air. Remember, it is very much a marathon and not a race. If you find yourself not gaining height as fast as you think you should, you'll once again need to fall to give your jump time to recharge. See, I've hit about the ceiling of what I can gain. But grapple will actually reset your height ceiling to wherever you use the grapple at. So keep that in mind if you need a bit more. Teleports are something of an interesting case. If you hit one in the air, you will likely remain in the air, and your height ceiling will be unchanged. In this case, the teleporter took us way down, which means that we're able to sword fly quite a ways up. This can be useful to reach high up into the air if you don't have access to, say, the navigator for grapple flying. Once again, patience is key. If you try to go too high up too fast, you'll just burn your jump. Unfortunately, this holds true in the other direction as well. If your teleporter takes you upwards, you will not be able to sword fly on the other side. See, I can kind of stretch it a little bit, but my catapult lift is giving me no height at all. If you find yourself in a situation where you're teleported upwards with no land in sight, keep in mind that you can use a grapple to re-enable sword flying. Otherwise, you won't really be able to sword fly level until you fall back to where you last touched the ground. By the way, I find the Strand is a pretty nice area to practice sword flying. Very nice views. The height ceiling isn't the only thing you have to worry about stealing your catapult lift. If you happen to be within a pushback barrier, you'll find that catapult lift does next to nothing. So you'll definitely want to look out for that. Make sure that you move out of a pushback barrier before attempting to jump. Now that we've taken a look at a lot of general sword flying things, it's time to take a look at how different types of swords figure into the mix. Let's take a look at lightweight frames. Thanks to Ergo sub, now all classes have access to all frames. Lightweight frames aren't really suitable for sword flying though. They don't really pull you forwards for the hang time. Aggressive frames are a bit different as well. They don't really pull you forwards as well, but they do seem to give you enough hang time to sort of sword fly with. I wouldn't recommend using one though. They're still not quite as good as adaptives. Adaptives, casters, vortexes, and wave frames all function about the same, so as long as you're not using an aggressive or lightweight frame, you won't really notice a difference. Lament was the first sword to sort of switch things up. If you block with Lament, it sort of revs, and then your swing will go a bit further. So to sword fly with Lament, you rev and swing repeatedly. While Lament has less ammo overall, you will go further because of this boosted swing. But there are better options these days. In the 30th anniversary, we got access to Eager Edge, a sword referencing an old Halo 2 glitch which would allow you to gain tremendous distance after swapping to a sword while targeting something. It takes a bit for the perk to refresh, so you can only really hit about every other swing with Eager if you're doing normal sword flying. Naturally, it doesn't go quite as far as in the Halo days, but we can do a little bit better. If you switch up the jumping style, you can get a bit more hang time, and that allows you to get eager edge every swing. While this is definitely more ammo efficient, I would not recommend doing it unless you really have to, because it is a lot easier to mess that up. While you can enhance it, the difference isn't very large. Nadir Focus is the newest addition to sword flying. It increases your lunge distance as you swing. You can prime this by swinging on the ground, and then your lunges in air will go further, as long as you use a very quick sword flying cadence. That downside makes it generally not worth using, but as you'll see in a bit, it does have some advantages. Let's take a look at how these compare. In the top left you can see eager edge at about 50%, that is, every other swing is an eager swing. Nadir Focus goes through ammo pretty quickly, which unfortunately does not turn out well for it. Lament has less ammo overall, but its big swings make up for that pretty well. And the normal sword, without stretching out the ammo with the super, doesn't quite make it. So Eager Edge is clearly the winner, but we can go a bit further than that. Here we'll take a look at what happens if you go full Eager using the double tap to jump, as well as if you immediately swap away from your sword. When you swap off of Eager Edge, it takes away some of the slowdown that it applies to get you back to normal speed. The effect isn't as big as it once was, but it definitely still is there. Enhancing still doesn't seem to have much of an effect. Here you can see that data up close. Eager clearly wins, and swapping off fast is better. After a long flight, you'll probably want to stock up on ammo. Luckily, you can do that without going anywhere. This sword claims to have max 70, although it's really 77. Hopefully they'll fix the UI at some point. Claims my minimum is 55, but it's 62. If you set your ammo low while alive and then high after you die, you'll regain a fraction of your ammo. You can see I've gone up to the max here. This works off of a fraction of the ammo you currently have. You can see if I start off at 3, I only go up by 1. So regen early, regen often. I don't like to get below 30. You can see here if I'm at 2 with this particular sword, I don't actually gain any ammo at all. That'll vary per sword, but luckily it's not over if you run out. Sure, the normal hilt swing doesn't really do much for you. See, I'm maybe flying a little bit with it, but you're not going to be going too far that way. Luckily, there are some perks that work without ammo. For instance, Eager Edge. It was definitely a lesser effect, but I did get a boost from it, and that works in air. So if you do your full Eager swings, stalling out enough for the perk to recharge, you can sword fly that way. Personally, I find Eager Edge hilt flying to be fairly difficult. I'm surprised I made it as far as I did here. But luckily for us, that's not the only perk this works with. If you paid close attention to the earlier Nadir Focus flight, you may have noticed that I kept going after I ran out of ammo for a bit. As long as you have the origin trait active, you can keep flying. This requires the exact opposite thing of Eager Edge. You need to keep up a fairly fast cadence. And if you delay your sword swing at all, you may find yourself falling. It's technically possible to restart it, but you'll be losing a lot of height doing that. Still easier than eager hilt flying though. Ergo Sum, being a special ammo sword, gives us some more options. For this you're going to want to have something with auto-loading holster ideally, because we're going to be using lack of ammo to our advantage. I've got a Vortex Ergo Sum just so it's good for sword flying, and you can see that I have received ammo out of the blue. So as long as we can stall out in the air long enough for the pity timer to give us more ammo, we can sword fly indefinitely. It can help to have reserves of the proper type on your chest piece to up the amount of max ammo you have on your sword. In order to fly in this way, you need your heavy ammo to be half or less. And you'll want to keep on draining your special. I would recommend just doing one shot in between sword swings, but you can get away with more than one. There's a nice audio cue you can listen to for auto-loading holster, so you know when to swap back to clear your ammo. The only downside is it does eat up your exotic slot, and sometimes you want a particular exotic equipped for other reasons. But it's still pretty handy to be able to sword fly infinitely. And with next to no catch, too. I found sword flying to be one of the most consistently useful bits of tech I know, and hopefully that'll help you in your explorations across Destiny. Anyways, I'll catch you later, and happy exploring.